There's this common misconception that when you're shooting night photography, your camera should essentially be able to see in the dark. But as you well know, if you've gone out and taken night photos or photos in low light, that does not mean the absence of light. It means utilizing the light around you to light your subject, your backgrounds, to ultimately get a stylized yet still properly exposed shot. There's a lot of ways to figure out how to create amazing low light photos, and in today's video I'm breaking down how I did it with the Nikon Z8, a camera that almost could see in the dark. My name's Andrew, welcome to the Lens Journalist channel. I'm really glad you're here. So in today's video, we're gonna do a little POV action as well as me just simply breaking down the photos that you're seeing on screen. But before we do any of that, I wanna give you the specs on the camera as well as the lenses that I was using. The Nikon Z8 is a 52 megapixel full frame mirrorless camera. It boasts really solid 5-axis image stabilization, really solid ergonomics. The camera feels great in hand, multiple subject autofocus from animals to humans to even tracking vehicles, 2 CF Express Type B card slots, and for video it can shoot 12-bit and RAW, ProRes RAW, and 10-bit H.265 all internally. That is super impressive. Now all of these specs are great, but what I really want to talk about is the ISO range. At the low end of 64 to the high end of 25,600, you may be thinking to yourself that that is not specifically unique to this camera. And even comparing it to other mirrorless cameras like the Canon R5 with an ISO range of 100 to 51,200, you might be thinking, sure, it can go a little bit lower, but it also can't go as high. But here's where the Nikon Z8 starts to separate itself from other mirrorless cameras. It has internal software that allows you to boost your ISO range all the way down to 32 and all the way up to 102,400. Yeah, that's right. That is such a high ISO range. So, you know, maybe the camera really could see in the dark. In regards to glass that I used on the camera, I used the Nikon 50mm f1.8, the Nikon 70-200 f2.8, and the Nikon 17-28 f2.8 lens. These are all Z series Nikkor lenses. So now that we have the specs out of the way, let's go ahead and talk photos. This very first photo was shot on the 50mm at f1.8. The shutter speed was 1/250th of a second, and we're looking at ISO 32,000. We took a lot in this location, but this is really the only photo that stuck out to me as one worthy of sharing with you guys. What I really enjoy about this photo is how the neon has framed around her head and acted as almost a rim or hair light. It added a lot of great separation from her and the background, and while the background would be deemed busy because I was able to stop down to f1.8, you're still able to see somewhat of what's happening and the ambient light behind her, but it's clear that she is the subject. Thinking like right here, like you're gonna put one leg, get more on it. Yeah, there you go. From here we moved on to these stone steps, and while I didn't change the shutter speed, I did change the lens. Taken with the 17-28mm at f2.8, I wanted to get some low angle, wide angle shots. I kept the ISO the same as well because I was trying to identify, really, we have all this backlight and all the shadow in the forefront of our image. I probably could have stopped my ISO down a little bit, but again, this is an ISO test in low light, so I wanted to show you what it could do in these different environments. Yeah, very cool. Eyes up to me, like up to the camera. Next, I wanted to focus on either your subject being in shadow or utilizing some sort of small handheld light. I didn't want to use flash specifically for this challenge. I wanted to go ahead and put the camera to the test in a low light environment, but the Aperture Amaran was a great tool in this setting. I was able to adjust the color temperature to match the neon lights going on around us to give a little bit of light fill on her face. Now that we had our fun inside with a lot of solid neon lights, it was time to put the 70-200 to the test outside. And we chose to do this because we stumbled upon a band playing some live music for hotel patrons, and they just happened to be in an area that just had a lot of floodlights. And I thought, okay, if this camera can really work wonders in the dark, this is gonna be a great location to do that. It's funny, I kept my shutter speed the same on all these photos. Sometimes I just lock in my shutter speed and I don't think about it, I work around that. But my ISO speed for this was at its natural peak of 25,600. Now, one thing to note about these photos, the RAWs had noise in them. Noise is going to be unavoidable in low light scenarios, especially if you're shooting RAW. But I wanted the dynamic range of RAW, and I wanted to push these files as hard as I could. And you can see here that they recover beautifully. These might be my favorite of the set simply because I feel like they ooze the personality of the environment we were in. They're dark, they're moody, they're colorful. I feel like this is the environment that I would want to shoot with this camera in. Now, don't think I forgot about the 50mm. We have a few more photos left. The 50mm is a crisp lens. It looks great. The compression is really nice on it, and that bokeh separation is so good. So there you have it. That is my time spent with the Nikon Z8 trying to get amazing night photography. And I wanted to share with you my final thoughts before we wrap this video up. There were a few things that I found tricky when using this camera. The autofocus is solid, especially with all of those different metering options and also focusing options from humans to animals to other objects. Those are all great. And it also has a pretty amazing pre-autofocus assist where it flashes a green light onto your subject if you're shooting in low light scenarios. This is very common. This is something that should be in every camera if you're using flash or if you're in that low light scenario. The thing is though, is that if you're out in public, you have a big camera, you got a big lens, you're at a bar and you start pre-flashing people, you're gonna stick out like a sore thumb. So I did not love that, and I ended up turning that off, which ultimately meant that the autofocus struggled. So a lot of time I spent manual focusing. I actually really enjoyed manual focusing with this glass. It felt really great in hand. And if you're having a hard time seeing through your viewfinder or your LCD, you can also enable autofocus peaking, which essentially just gives you a red line around the things that are in focus, and that was really helpful, and I really enjoyed using the camera that way. Night photography as a whole kind of takes me out of my normal sensibilities of how to take a photo. I don't often do it, and I've not ever really felt super drawn to it, but it's great to know that there are tools out there that we can use, like the Nikon Z8, to make amazing night photos. So would I recommend this camera for a night style shoot in the city? Absolutely. And if you want more details on this camera, my friend Dom over at Lens Pro To Go has a full video up that went live today that you should absolutely check out. But before you do that, what do you think? Did you like the Nikon Z8? Do you like low light photography? What did I miss? And if any of this stuff got you excited to pick up your gear and shoot or rent or try out new gear, then I recommend you like, comment, subscribe, because that's the kind of content we're gonna be giving you. And if you wanna get your hands on this camera or these lenses that I used, there's a link down below. I'm just making it too easy for y'all. I'm making it too easy for you just to get your hands on great gear. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Leg up in the air.
Never mind, that's not good.